5 people killed every day by assisted suicide in Belgium as euthanasia cases soar by 27% in last year alone. By Simon Caldwell, 28th of May, 2014. Rise in deaths will fuel fears about country's controversial policy as under 60 seconds accounted for just 15% of the total number of cases. Belgium was only second country in Europe after Holland to legalize practice. Doctors in Belgium are killing an average of 5 people every day by euthanasia, new figures have revealed. The statistics also show a huge 27% surge in the number of euthanasia cases in the last year alone. The soaring number of deaths will inevitably fuel fears that euthanasia is out of control in Belgium, a country which only months ago became the first in the world to allow doctors to kill terminally ill children. There have been a surge in the number of euthanasia deaths in Belgium since it was legalized in 2003. Earlier this year there were protests to stop the law being extended to children. The figures, published in Sud Presse, Belgium's leading French-speaking newspaper, showed that 1,816 cases of euthanasia were reported in 2013 compared to 1,432 in 2012, an overall increase of 26.8%. You could say that currently there are 150 cases of euthanasia per month in Belgium, or, even more telling, 5 people euthanized a day, single quote the newspaper said. Of the total number of cases in 2013, 51.7% were male patients and 48.3% were female. Elderly people aged between 70 and 90 years made up just over half, 53.5%, of the total. Those aged between 60 and 70 years represented 21%, and those aged over 90 years 7%. The under 60 seconds accounted for just 15% of the total number of cases. In 2003, Belgium was the second country in the world to legalize euthanasia after Holland liberalized the law a year earlier, becoming the first country since Nazi Germany to permit the practice. Over the past decade, the numbers of Belgians dying by euthanasia has crept up incrementally. Controversial. In February, the Belgian House of Representatives voted in favor of extending the policy to children who are terminally ill or in a state of unrelieved suffering. There was a 25% increase in the number of euthanasia deaths from 2011 to 2012, soaring from 1,133 to 1,432, a figure representing about 2% of all deaths in the country. In February, Belgium extended euthanasia to children who are terminally ill and in a state of unrelieved suffering. They must also be judged to have capacity of discernment, affirmed by a psychologist, and the consent of their parents before they can die by injection. Anti-euthanasia campaigners have argued that such safeguards have consistently proved to be meaningless. They say that besides patients who are gravely ill, euthanasia is used increasingly on people with depression or non-terminal conditions. Those killed include deaf twins Mark and Eddie Verbessem, 45, who were granted their wish to die in December 2012 after they learned they would likely to become blind. Last year, Nancy Verhelst, 44, a transsexual, was also killed by euthanasia after doctors botched her sex change operation, leaving her with physical deformities she felt made her look like a monster. Disability rights campaigner Nikki Kenward of the UK-based Distant Voices pressure group said the figures demonstrated the difficulties in regulating euthanasia. She said that once a country legalized assisted suicide or euthanasia, people were inevitably killed in greater numbers than ever envisaged. The figures should serve as a warning to the parliament not to change the law on homicide to allow even assisted suicide, she said. As the numbers of people dying from euthanasia in Belgium grow, that slippery slope comes into vision, said Mrs. Kenward of Aston-on-Clun, Shropshire. I am vulnerable, said Mrs. Kenward, who has been in a wheelchair since the 90s when she developed Guillain-Barré syndrome. I'm afraid of becoming another statistic, another faceless victim, she said, adding, "We are told that safeguards will protect us from abuses. They certainly do not protect the elderly in Belgium."